You're listening to the Lead On podcast, where we discuss experiences in the armed forces while exploring lessons from military leaders.
How you doing? Welcome to another edition of the Enlisted Leadership's Foundation Lead On Lessons from Military Leaders. I'm David Deary, the president of the Enlisted Leadership Foundation, and I am honored today to be joined to introduce to you Ray Fitzgerald. Ray, how are you today?
I'm good, David. How are you?
I'm doing good, thanks. So Ray is a Chief Master Sergeant, part of the 136th Attack Squadron. He's the senior enlisted leader for the Niagara Falls Air Reserve Station in Niagara Falls, New York. I was fortunate to meet Ray earlier this year, just through a mutual acquaintance, I believe it was, Ray. And Ray was the first senior enlisted leader that was non-Navy that participated in our Foundry Leadership class. So Ray, thank you again for being with us today.
David, thank you and the Enlisted Leadership Foundation. The Foundry class was an amazing experience, and I'm humbled and honored to be here on your brand new podcast.
Yeah, well, great. So Ray, coming up through life, people always offer us leadership advice. In fact, even earlier today, my daughter's having some struggles at work, and she's like, "Dad, how should I handle this?" But I just was curious. What's the worst piece of leadership advice somebody ever gave Ray Fitzgerald?
That's a great question, because you always remember the great advice you had. But some of the worst advice I think I've ever had, or something that's been said to me when I was a younger airman. I asked a question, I believe it was on the airplane, an instructor was instructing me, and I said, "Well, why do we do it that way? Why is it done that way?" And he said, "Well, that's the way we've always done it." And I was like, okay, I didn't really understand that. But as I came to grow through the military and I became an instructor, and to be credible, when you ask and you train somebody, you should always have a reference to be able to show them. So I always thought that has got to be the worst saying and piece of advice I've ever heard, because it stagnates culture and growth. That's the way we've always done it. It inhibits innovation and efficiency. So when I hear that now amongst my troops and my airmen, I tell them, no, we need to constantly be evolving programs, processes, and people. We can't stagnate. We have to accelerate and evolve and innovate to become a relevant military in the 21st century.
And you can even take that a step further. If you want to be relevant in general, in a business, as a business owner, as a leader, you've always got to continue to grow and change and be flexible. I think it's funny when I would encounter people in the military. "Oh, I don't like change. Why do we have to change for the sake of change?" Well, sometimes change is just what we need to do to remain relevant, so that we don't get stuck. And hey, it's the way we've always done it. So tell us real briefly, Ray, why did you join the military? What was it about going on in your life that led you in the direction to where you are now?
Well, that's a funny story. Like most high school seniors, military recruiters come around your high school year, senior year, and you take the ASVAB, the Armed Services Vocational Aptitude Battery, to see, how you score to be if you were going to go in the military. I took it because it got me out of half a day of class. That's pretty much why I took it, right? So, and then I went on to college, and I went to the University of Buffalo for a semester and a half, and I was working a lot because I didn't get a lot of tuition assistance, and I was taking the bus. I didn't have my own car. So after a semester and a half of slugging through the snows in Western New York and going to college on a bus, and it just got to be very challenging. So the recruiter, timely enough as recruiters do, called me, said, "Hey, your ASVAB scores are still current. Do you want to come down and discuss some options about maybe coming in the Air Force?" So I did, and sure enough, about the summer of 1990, I enlisted. And right then is when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait oil fields. And I was on delayed enlistment up till February 91. And that's when I came in the Air Force. So that's kind of my story of enlisting.
Yeah, that's a great story. So 1990, so you're finishing up 30 years of service, just over 30 years. That's fantastic. So in that time, we talked earlier about a specific leadership data point or leadership topic that was impacting to you. We can define leadership in so many different ways. I will often tell people, with regards to the Enlisted Leadership Foundation, I'll be asked, "Well, Dave, what kind of leadership principles do you guys teach?" And I just say, we teach about relational leadership. But even that is such a broad umbrella. There's so much that you can unpack that goes into being a relational leader. So if I were to ask Ray, or were to ask you, what's a main leadership topic that maybe you that has affected you or that you think uh, is best for others to try to learn about themselves? What would you call that and why?
Um, I think a central theme through my leadership, as I've learned throughout the career, and it's often ignored on leaders, is self awareness. I think you have to be able to lead yourself first before you lead other people. And I think when we become leaders in certain positions in the military, we worry about we're supervising people. We have to develop our people. We have to lead our people. Well, nobody worries about self awareness. And I think true leaders have to look internally. You have to know your own strengths, your weaknesses, your biases, and how your thoughts and emotions, affect your decision making. Because I guess that's the biggest thing in the military is decision making, whether you got all the data or not. And so knowing that you can obviously recruit and develop diverse groups of teams around you as leaders, and you can, if you know your shortfalls as a leader and your weaknesses, well, you can surround yourself with people that are good in those spots, and you can make your diverse team well balanced across
Right.
all different qualities fields.
You mentioned and building teams, building, knowing who you are and what your strengths are. Oftentimes we need to fill in our weaknesses with those people that have those qualities as their strengths. And if you weren't self-aware, you wouldn't know that yourself. Um, you know, so at what point in your career, coming up through the ranks, E1 up to E9, uh, did you turn about being passionate for yourself, turn that being self-aware of yourself, if you will, towards other people and helping them become self-aware of their own strengths and weaknesses?
I think it was when I upgraded to being an instructor in the KC-135 as a boom operator. I've been an instructor in three different airplanes: the KC-135 and the C-130 flight engineer, and now an MQ-9. I think when I became an instructor, the best thing I liked about is teaching is watching the light bulb come on when you teach something to somebody and you start developing them. So
Mm.
as you move up in the military, as you know, David, it becomes less and less about you and more about the people underneath you. So I just caught a passion for developing people, and whether it was instructing them in their technical skills or as I moved up the chain, kind of developing people's supervisory and leadership skills. My passion really is about people. And it will always be that way. And no matter what job I have when I get out of the military, and I'm trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up, when I get out, it's always going to be about people, whether it be human resources or helping veterans transition. That's truly when I become the light bulb came on for me to be passionate, is when I saw people learning and they could learn from me and I could develop them. That's when I was like, this is my calling right here. This is my passion.
Listening to you, right now in the Navy today, as a matter of fact, today and tomorrow, we are promoting our newest chief petty officer. So we're doing it's a big promotion, E6 to E7. I say tomorrow as well, because if you're a full-time support or if you're a reservist, the ceremony is tomorrow. And I've been asked to be the speaker for a ceremony tomorrow. And I'm going to be talking about the brand of the Navy chief. And I think in what you just said about being self-aware, about leadership's never about you, it's always about somebody else. And that's one of the tenets that during our 6-week initiation process that we really try to reinforce to our new chief petty officers is leadership. It's never been about you. It's always about other people. But now as a Navy chief, you have that brand of our anchor and how people will look at you. So what you do, what you say, how you do it is not only going to affect your personal brand, but that brand of a chief as well. And you have to be self-aware of the kind of leader, kind of person that you are, like you said. So yeah, so you shared what I think is a great story um, about yourself, and about an entrepreneurial opportunity that you had, that I think that you had to make some tough decisions, because leaders, you said earlier about making decisions, and we have to make decisions all the time. Decisions are good and decisions are bad, and decisions have outcomes. So, what was it about Ray in a bar um, that it ties into the self awareness and decision idea that we're discussing?
Shortly after I left active duty and joined the Air National Guard in early 1990s, 1994, my uncle had owned a bar and restaurant for many years and was going to look at selling it. And me and my cousins were thinking about buying in. So he was going to hold a mortgage, and it was going to be a great business opportunity for us. And we were all young at the time. So I was in the Air National Guard. I had just Palace chased from active duty, and I was up in Niagara Falls at the New York Air National Guard. And we started the bar, and it took off. We all grew up in that neighborhood. We had a lot of friends. It was a younger crowd bar, like early 20s, mid 20s bar, sports bar theme, a lot of sports, and it was flourishing. However, with it flourishing, I was just a drill status guardsman at the time. I wasn't full time, so I had to come in 1 weekend a month and my 2 weeks during the year. But I would work Friday nights. We split up the shifts between us, and on Friday nights I would work. And the bars in our county close at 4 a.m, so you have to be out of there by 4:30. So I'd work Friday night, which went into Saturday morning, and drill is Saturday morning. So for a while, I started playing the game. I just go home and catch 2 hours of sleep. I'll be at drill at 7, and that'll be fine. And I burnt the candle at both ends for a while. And of course, as you can see, this leading up to total failure, I overslept a couple of times. I got in trouble with my chiefs and my peers. And basically, I got sat down for a counseling session, and my chief said to me, well, you're a very good member of the Guard, but you have to make a decision. Do you want to be a bar owner, or do you want to be a member of the New York Air National Guard? And that was some soul searching for me, because the business was doing well. We were making money. But I'm glad I was able to look at the bigger picture at the time, the long range picture of I just got in the Guard, and I really wanted to make my military service my career. So I sold my portion out to my cousins. And then about 6 or 7 years later, I got hired on full time up there, and I've never looked back. So it was a great business opportunity. They kept it many years after that, where it was very profitable. But I chose service over, and the bar life, as you know, is probably one of the funnest jobs you can have. So the temptation was there to be fun and make money versus having devoting your life towards service, which is what I wanted to do.
Tough decisions. We learn from our decisions, and those the sacrifices that we make, especially like you said, burning the candle at both ends. Although I'm sure that helped you throughout your career, because for those that never served, to think that we just do a 7 or 8 hour day at work, it couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, I think that the higher up we go up our food chain, and now as a chief, yourself as a senior enlisted leader, as somebody responsible for so much, you have to be able to burn the candle at both ends to do your job effectively. So
Absolutely.
but I will just tell you, when that time comes for you to transition and join others of us on this side of the blue line, you don't have to continue doing that nearly as frequently. It's nice to know that you have the ability to, but it's nice to not have to anymore. Was there ever an opportunity that you, as the senior enlisted leader at your current command, or another time, where you had to help somebody else discover their self-awareness, if you will, maybe that they never really understood this self-aware concept themselves?
Yeah, David, absolutely. There's definitely a time. I think we both know that the toughest transition in an enlisted member's career is going from E6 to E7.
Oh, yeah.
You go from being the tactical and technical expert to the supervisory duties, and that shift is very tough for people, because they know their job very well. They like doing it, and then they get pulled out of there to do more supervisory administrative duties. And E6 is tech sergeant in the Air Force, and it's petty officer first class in the Navy, and then it goes to master sergeant E7, where you go to chief petty officer in the chief's mess in the Navy, which I know is a huge deal. And I learned a lot from the Enlisted Leadership Foundation about the chief's mess, so thank you. But I had an individual who was promoted to Master Sergeant E7, and I pulled him off the daily flying schedule, and I assigned him as a unit training manager. And he was given an office and programs, and he was in charge of tracking all of our training and ensuring we were all ready. All ground and flying training was accomplished and tracked. Shortly after he was assigned, he gave me a phone call at home. It was really eating him up and bothering him. And the phone call didn't go very well on my end, because he spoke a lot, raised his voice a lot, was very colorful language. And I knew he was, displeased, so I didn't have to counsel him on the phone.
Ray, what was he upset about?
He was upset. Like, I signed up to be a sensor operator. I'm an MQ-9 sensor operator. When I signed up, and I signed up to fly. That's my job. I said, it is when you're an E6 and below. But when you're an E7, you're going to run programs, processes, and people. You're in charge of not doing a job anymore, but supervising the people to do a job. So I explained all that to him on the phone, but I really didn't think he was listening. He was doing more of talking at that point. So I said, well, how about we, reattack this in the future? You and I can sit down and we can talk about it. And he was all fired up, and he hung up on me.
So he was upset about getting promoted from E6 to E7 and having to become a manager and not that technical. Not that he loses his technical expertise, but that he would not be operating as a technician anymore.
Yeah, that he said. I said, okay, well, that's great. I know you love doing your job, and you'll do less of it. You'll still do it, but you'll do less of it. And I could take that stripe away, and you could go back to being an E6 and flying the schedule. And that's a pretty big bump for pay. So that was part of the conversation. And then that's what he was upset about. I'm sorry I promoted you, and now you have more additional responsibility.
Wow.
So a week later, he came into my office or thereabout, and he closed the door and he said, Chief, can I get a few minutes? I go, absolutely. And he said, first of all, I have to apologize the way I spoke to you on the phone. And I said, yeah, I knew you're upset, Tony, and I understand that. And he goes, I also understand I'm more aware now. I have self-awareness of, I have self-awareness of where my place is in the chain of command. Because I had also directed him towards our enlisted force structure book, which clearly delineates the NCO and senior NCO lines. I said, you might want to read this a little bit more, educate yourself on your new rank. And he said, yep. He goes, I'm going to dive right into being the best unit training manager I can. I understand I can still fly. I'll maintain my currencies, but he goes, I want to, thank you for promoting me and giving me this opportunity, and I'll do the best job I can for you. So the light bulb came on for him, and I'll tell you what, he's been one of the best senior NCOs I've had, and I've put him up for outstanding senior NCO of the year, which is the first time he's been in about 20 years. And when I put him up for the wing, he came in and he goes, Chief, I just want to tell you, my career's done a 180 since I've made Master Sergeant. He goes, I was in maintenance for almost 20 years. Nobody's ever put me in for an award. He goes, you put me in for senior NCO of the year. And he goes, I had to get him ready for the board, make sure his uniform was good, questions were good. But he said, I said, well, I recognized your turnaround. You made a 180-degree switch. And so he has since not only excelled, he's grasped it and he's excelled in, and he's actually up for E8 this year. So he could be moving on to.
Ray, I wonder if let's go back to the very beginning, because we've always done it that way. I wonder if this young man, he'd always done it the same way. And maybe those leaders before you had always done it the same way and never took the time to not only put him in for award, for doing a great job, but even took the time to expose him and share with him the duties and responsibilities. Because every promotion, things change, that self-awareness piece. And then you think what you've just, done with him, how is that now going to affect how he treats others? And that's just going to expand exponentially, which is what we do as leaders, right? Is goes back to those decisions that we make. Leadership is influence, and we're going to influence positively or negatively. A leader is going to influence, and being self-aware ourselves and how what we do will influence those. I mean, I tell you, we could probably continue talking self-awareness for another half an hour, but our time is about up. So we may just have to revisit this at a later date. We'll do a part 2.
I would love to, David.
Okay. Well, listen, before we end, I asked you maybe the worst piece of leadership advice somebody ever gave you at the beginning. How about it? Have you ever had the luckiest, probably the worst, but luckiest leadership decision that you've ever made? We've all made some bad decisions. We just hope that they aren't so bad that they negatively affect us. And sometimes we get lucky. Have you ever had one of those?
I'm sure I have a lot to choose from. But you asked me on the spot here, and I'm drawing. One of the big ones that sticks out for me, and it's a leadership decision, but it was also a career decision. When we converted from the KC-135s when I was a boom operator, and we were going to C-130s, the Michigan Air National Guard, I had some friends up there, and they were still flying the KC-135s. And they said, hey, we just started the KC-135s a couple of years ago. You're an experienced instructor. If you don't want to stay at Niagara Falls and be a C-130 flight engineer, you can come up and fly with us, and we'll sign you on. We can use some experienced instructors. And I was single at the time, no family, nothing, outside of keeping me down. I'm like, wow, I love being a boom operator. I really have. It's the only job I've known in the Air Force. And I said, I think I'm going to do it. I was leaning towards the fence. And I had a few leadership people talk to me about Niagara and staying and doing this. And I think it comes back to I got lucky because some of the leaders told me, look at not only your original decision making, but look at the second and third effects of your decision making. So I stayed, became a flight engineer, even though I loved being a boom operator, and I still look back. And then this other weapons conversion came to the MQ-9, and I've been fortunate in my career through mission conversions and other spots that I was in the right spot at the right time and had the right mentors. So that was maybe one of the luckiest errors because I was pretty much set on going to the Michigan Air National Guard, and I stayed here. I've had flourished as my career's flourished. I met my wife. We have 4 beautiful children. She was from the local area. So you look back and you go, where would my life have been if I went to Michigan? I don't know. But I stayed here. And you know what? Sometimes we look at those first order effects as like, it's easy to do this. Second and third order effects of your decision down the road was like, you can't maybe see them all the time. Good leaders can strategically. I didn't see it at the moment. I had some mentors that maybe pointed me down that path. But I always say this story to my friends is like, and my subordinates. First order effects, think about the second and third order effects, like exercise, right? You want to exercise, right? Well, it's painful to exercise. It hurts. You sweat. It's tough. But the second and third order effects are you're going to be healthy and you're going to look good probably. You're going to look better, right? But you don't see those second and third order effects. Why? Because you got to get through the first order effects. And that was going to be tough for me to stay and restart a new career as a C-130 flight engineer. Great. I got to go all the way back to school for 6 months to learn how to fly a different airplane, to do all this, when I could just easily go to Michigan. So that was the easy part of making a first order effect. But the second and third order effects were I stayed where I was at. I had experience. They knew me in the squadron. They had a career path for me. And the second and third order effects are exactly where I'm at in my career right now. So
that's perfect. What a great way to end our conversation today. Greg, thank you for being here. It's been great getting to know you this year. I look forward to continuing to work with you with future classes here with the Enlisted Leadership Foundation. And, if you'll be up for it, I'd like to be able to have another conversation with you here in the future.
David, I am grateful and thankful that you exposed me to the Enlisted Leadership Foundation and the Foundry class initially. Amazing experience. I talk about it at our wing all the time, and I'm trying to get our professional development committee to fund at least one E6 to go to your class starting next year. So I have a meeting with the wing commander to do that. But I am available at any time. Your foundation is great, and everything you guys do. Being exposed to Jim, Rich, and the rest of your staff has been great for my professional development, for me to bring back to my wing as well. So
thank you. You're welcome. You're welcome. Absolutely. So thank you, everyone, again, for joining us today. Lead On, Lessons from Military Leaders. Today, you heard from Chief Master Sergeant Ray Fitzgerald of the Niagara Falls Air Reserve Station in New York. I'm David Deary with the Enlisted Leadership Foundation. Join us next time, the 1st and the 15th, Military Paydays, for future editions of Lead On, Lessons from Military Leaders. Bye-bye.